Greg Mescall here with you as we continue our At Home with USA Water Polo series. And this week, our theme has been looking back at memorable moments from the men's water polo history in the United States. And we have the great pleasure of being joined by our guest, three-time Olympian, two-time Olympic silver medalist, Craig Wilson. Craig, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Greg.
Craig, you obviously had the good fortune of playing during what was kind of the golden era of men's water polo in the U.S. 1984, 88, back-to-back silver medals, a win away from the podium in 92. Let's kind of start back before the 84 games, and it's a great pickup from our conversation yesterday with guys you know well, Peter Schnug and Chris Dorst, as we talked about the 1980 Olympic Games and the boycott and Team USA having not at that point then gone to the Olympic Games. Now, by the time 84 rolls around, they haven't been in an Olympics in over 10 years. It hasn't happened since 72. So your memories as you're leading up to Los Angeles, what's the anticipation like for USA Water Polo's return to the Olympics for the first time in a long time?
Well, Greg, I did have a chance to see the Peter interview and Mr. Dorst, of course, and I learned a lot. When I was fortunate enough to receive the phone call from Monty Niskowski saying, would you like to come down and start training with the team, which was really right after the boycott. Of course, I said I'd love to join the team. And I found it in the very beginning incredibly surreal because here I am in the pool with players that I have watched, admired, and they were truly my heroes. I felt very awkward. But within a week or two, I don't really have a date, but I knew that I could play with these guys. So I felt that Monty's invitation was extremely welcomed and that I did have something to prove and to show. So, I started off as the rookie of the rookie of the rookies. And I think there were 4 or 5 goalies in the camp at that time. Of course, Chris Dorst, Steve Hammond, who was on the 1980 team, John Gansel, who was a superstar from Stanford. We fought and fought and fought. And as time went by, I think it's been mentioned many times, these people become your brothers. You travel around the world and you fight and you live and cry and hug. Leading up to the 84 Olympics, it was very stressful because I think, as is well documented in this book, Swimming Through Life, written by Diana Lyle Edison, Monty was a really tough character. He made the workouts as difficult as possible, mainly mentally. Physically, of course, every water polo workout is difficult, but he wanted to break you, and he wanted to see, who's going to make it. And it's well documented that we went through the ringer, and the beauty of it, which I came to realize after the Olympics in '84, was diving in the pool in the 1984 Olympics was a piece of cake. Playing a game, if you could make it through Monty's workouts for a year or 2 or 3, you've proven yourself.
We were talking about this yesterday a bit with Peter and Chris, and Peter, being the elder statesman of that group, gave us the knowledge that through the 70s leading up to the 80s, it was an up and down journey. The team, bronze medal in 72, some good years, some not so good years. They all agreed the 1980 team was a really good team and was certainly a podium favorite. Then the boycott happens. Everyone knows by now that you'd go on to win silver in Los Angeles, but what were the expectations leading into those games? Was that a team that everyone thought, oh, for sure, this is a medal team, or was it an underdog story? What was your memory?
Well, throughout the 4 years leading up to that Los Angeles Olympics, we played in a number of tournaments. And, unfortunately, we finished 6th, I want to say, in '82 in Guayaquil, Ecuador. We were competitive every single game. We always went into a tournament, always went into a game expecting to win. I think what really put us over the hump to where we knew we could win in LA was the fact that we trained together for 3 or 4 months leading up to LA. I think Peter mentioned in his piece that we all had jobs. We worked out maybe Tuesday and Wednesday nights at Belmont Plaza in Long Beach. And then every other weekend, we would train Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that's not really conducive to becoming a gold medal team. But once we pulled ourselves together, and Monty did a great job, Monty and Ken did a great job of putting the camp together. You're training 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, and your confidence, your physicality, your knowledge of the game takes a spike upwards.
You talked about the competition to make that team, right? There's so many talented players, and remembering getting the call that you make the roster. When you finally find out that you're going to go to these Olympic Games, after getting that call 3 years earlier just to train, is it a sense of relief? Is it joy? How do you process this thing you've worked so hard at, and then know you have a goal to accomplish after it?
That's a very fair question. I did not feel comfortable until I walked into the opening ceremonies. That's when I knew I was an Olympian. And we went up to Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo as our final 2 weeks or so of training. And I remember driving back from San Luis Obispo to Los Angeles, because I was living there, and I stopped at the pool in Malibu. That I didn't know what it was going to look like. I pulled up in the parking lot and I walked in, and there was maybe 2 or 3 workers kind of finalizing some things. But this was 3 or 4 days before the Olympics. And I think that might have been the first taste, like, holy crap, it's coming, man. I think I probably sat and just looked at the pool and watched for about 30 minutes. And then I just remember the relief of walking into the opening ceremonies. And everybody wants to do it in their own home country. That was absolutely phenomenal. That's when I go, I'm an Olympian. You know what? I'm on the track and I'm waving to the 100,000 people, and it's pretty emotional.
I can only imagine. And it's interesting in your career that the home Olympics was your first one, and then you'd go on to do other ones in other countries. And so I gather you gained perspective about what a home Olympics meant after you experienced ones that were in other countries. What was that lead up like? I've seen the old pictures of guys from the team and Snickers ads and Reebok ads, and it felt like men's water polo was just this big thing, and everyone knew what was going on in the pool. How do you remember just the buildup around it being a home Olympic Games?
We did get a lot of very positive press. I even had a chance to do a milk commercial after the Olympics, and John Seaman. I think it must have been people like yourself who in the media were promoting our team very well. It was fun. You get some free Reebok sneakers. There was a lot of activity, a lot of fun. But again, Monty made sure, and we did too. We self-policed ourselves. It's fun after 6 hours of work to be handed a couple boxes of I should say Snickers, Reebok sneakers. But I think that we were so well focused that we just said, "Hey, this is kind of cool," but at the same time, we got a big job to do here.
Athletes, coaches so often talk about blocking out distractions.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a bigger one than playing in the biggest event in essentially your team's own backyard in Malibu. How do you kind of keep all that? I mean, I'm sure you're hearing from everyone you've ever met going into those games and leading up. Good luck, Craig. How's it going? Can I get tickets? All that sort of stuff. How do you put that aside and focus and play really good water polo?
Well, I think 4 years of conditioning and Monty's ritual of keeping us on a level playing field. I do remember during the LA Olympics, my Olympic experience really started in 1968. I was 11 years old and I watched the Mexico City games, and I was enthralled with it. I just thought it was the coolest darn thing I'd ever seen. So I don't remember which game it was. It might've been one of the first 2 or 3. I remember actually going, oh, I can actually look up in the stands, because I was looking down 30 meters and 20 meters. And occasionally, maybe during a timeout or during a quarter, you'd kind of just sneak a peek. But really, the discipline that we had was so intense that I really didn't think about it that much until I had to slap myself and go, oh, guess where I am.
Now, this team plays so well in Los Angeles, right? You make your way all the way And for those that are unaware, it was a goal differential situation that decided medals. Then it wasn't a classic championship game as you think of in today's Olympic Games. But the team, the way they played, getting to that podium, the way that they finished, how do you describe the way the group came together to play so strongly? I know that you wanted obviously the gold medal result, but still a podium finish. What do you remember about the way that group gelled during that Olympic tournament?
I think we gelled just as we expected to. Again, as I mentioned earlier, traveling around the world with tremendous wins and horrible losses, and all the time we spend in the pool together. They're your family. I'm sure you've heard that expression many times. But we performed as well as I expected we could. It was actually all of our first Olympics. So unlike 88 and 92, when you've been through it once, so it was all new, but we were so ready to go. We were so ready to go.
And so in those Olympic Games, it ends in the draw, a silver medal for Team USA, not where team sports want to finish, of course. And now we know in modern day Olympics, it becomes a thing where you have two winners on the final day. The winner of the gold medal, the winner of the bronze medal, and the silver medal team loses a match. It has to be a different environment. I know rules would change as the Olympic Games would go on. And I'm sure it's a tough moment to think back on, but how does that group process where you didn't lose the final, but you don't get the result you wanted?
We knew, obviously, as the team, that we had to win. We knew that a tie was a silver medal. Yeah. But unfortunately, I don't think that was communicated to the people in the stands. And I think my parents probably knew, but I think that was the biggest mystery at the conclusion of that game, because everybody was standing up, clapping, and they thought we won the gold medal. Oh. And it was really a difficult, bittersweet moment, knowing that we just earned a silver medal. We did not lose a game in the Olympic Games. And I think probably the hardest part was, once you shower and you leave the pool and you run into your friends and your family, they go, "What happened?" And then you have to explain to them. And that took a while. That was difficult, but I hold my head very high. We played well. It was a wonderful team. Great athletes, super people, still in touch with almost all of them.
Now, I know that you were not on that 1980 team, but I brought this up yesterday with Chris and Peter, and I'm sure you saw it. And I asked Chris this question, obviously you wanted the gold, you get the silver. What part of him was thinking back to those guys that didn't get their opportunity, the ones that missed out, and did that mean something important to him to represent those guys that had come before? And he didn't even hesitate and say yes.
Again,
you have that sense.
Some of the players from the 80 team were in the camp. Eric Lindroth being one of them that I can think of. I mean, he was at the national team workouts. I mean, he was on the 72 team. He showed me that was the first Olympic medal I've ever seen. I went to Eric's house and saw a bronze medal. I go, "Oh man, this is so cool." So some of the players that were not selected to compete in '84, I got a chance to know, and everybody's pretty damn humble. We felt we were doing it really for USA water polo, period. And it's a memory that I hold my head high. And I was really moved by watching the interview with Peter and Chris, because we really didn't talk about that much. I think maybe that's the answer you're looking for. Is it's not something we spent evenings and afternoons talking about the '80 boycott.
Yeah, well, and I can imagine, and if you watched our talk yesterday, it's been 40 years. It's still a painful topic, and I really appreciated those guys delving into it, because it's not something that is the fondest memories, as you've alluded to. As the '84 games finish, and it's your first experience, do you immediately say to yourself, "I want to do this again"? How fast can I get to '88, or what's your process to look towards Seoul in 1988?
Well, I wasn't ready to jump back in. It's pretty intense. And I had been working at a company in Los Angeles from 82, 83, 84. So part-time, maybe 20 hours a week. And I really appreciated the company giving me time off, full salary. I was very fortunate. So I focused at least the first couple of years, maybe 85, 86, on working. So I was putting in 40-hour weeks, 45-hour weeks, and I really wasn't practicing. And then Barnett came up to me. I was still playing water polo. During those days, we had incredibly strong club teams. You know, there was a team from Stanford, and it's so changed now, but we had wonderful, wonderful competitions in the summer. So I was really just focusing on the club scene. And then Barnett kind of approached me and said, Craig, we'd really like you to come back out. And I said, okay, you know what? I'll do this. So it now became a 70-hour weeks between full-time work and then full-time training. Well, not full-time training, but training.
And he lures you back in, and so many water polo players talk about this. And as you said, it wasn't that you weren't playing water polo at all, right? You're still playing.
No, I was still playing.
But was there another level you had to get back to?
Yes, of course. You know, you do lose your edge. But again, I was playing with Terry Schroeder, and I played together, John Seaman. There were 3 or 4 of us that were national team players. And then we'd play against Vargas and those guys from Irvine. And then we'd play against Jody Campbell and, you know, James Bergeson from Stanford. And then there'd be the Berkeley guys. So the level of play really didn't diminish much. It's just getting that focused attention together as a team unit that I probably need to reintegrate. But a goalie is a little bit different because we kind of play by ourselves and we play with the team. We're kind of that odd mixture.
We're talking with Craig Wilson, 3-time Olympian goalie for Team USA. What did you learn from Los Angeles that you were able to kind of apply in your journey to Seoul? How did you get better as a player and a teammate?
Well, I would say LA was absolutely a blast. I mean, it's just a miracle of events that just came together so well. I would say that in Seoul, going to Seoul, I was 100% business. I wasn't, you know, I managed my time very carefully. I didn't go out with friends. My parents came, of course, I met with them occasionally, but I spent a lot of time in the video room. The technology had improved so much that you could go back and look at your game that you played. You could look at your opponents that you're playing against, their previous games. And I definitely picked up some pearls. When we played the Soviets in the semifinal game, there was a young player called Dmitry Panasenko. And he was not necessarily the high scorer of the tournament, but he was just scoring from everywhere. So I started watching the Russians. And it was really interesting because he shot 95% of the time low, under the arm, and mainly to the right side. So I just kept looking and going, oh my gosh. So sure enough, when we played him, I played coy. I didn't know where it was going. And then once he let it go, I'd come across with 2 hands and blocked a lot of shots. And I think he probably got pretty frustrated. I've never told him that because I got to know him later on in Italy. But yeah, doing the homework was really the focus. When we went out a little bit, did some shopping, but I would say I was really a dorm rat.
Yeah, well, and as you said, right, all business and the focus of you and the rest of the national team. As that group came together, I imagine another highly competitive process to make that roster again. What do you recall about the selection of that group and trying to make sure that you were still at the top of your game to be a part of that roster?
Well, me myself, I just played. You know, when you show up to practice, it's business. It's all business focus. And after practice, then you can go back to having some fun and doing those things. But the 1988 team was so damn good. A lot of those players on the 88 team were part of the national team training camp. Like, as you may know, James Bergeson was one of the alternates. So I played with a majority of those players for a long, long time, or against them for a long time. So it was really a matter of just making sure that we all stayed focused. And, as you are aware, we beat UCLA, we beat Yugoslavia the first game of the Olympics. So that was a was a great game. So it really started everything, the ball rolling in a positive way.
And then from there, again, making it back to the podium and getting back to that final. What do you recall about the way that you guys played in Seoul and were able to work through that competition? I imagine that first one over Yugoslavia was probably, even though you had games in between, a little cathartic to knock them off early to start off your next Olympic run.
I think it was a very positive win. You know, to knock off the gold medal champion the first game. I mean, we trained a lot with Yugoslavia throughout the years leading up to '84. They would come to California and we'd train together and play exhibition games. So we knew them really well. I think, you know, if we didn't win the majority of the games, it was darn close through the 4 years leading up to it. But I would say that first win was incredibly important, and it kind of set the tone. You know, as I speak to kids at schools, and I don't do as much as I used to, but I'd always started off saying, what team in the 1984 Olympics did not win a gold medal, but did not lose a game? And they all look and go, water polo? So then I go to tell them, yeah, it was water polo. And the thing was that FINA, the international governing body, changed the rules. So when you play a gold medal game, it can't end in a tie. What a great idea. So I would say, you know, as we played Yugoslavia in the final game, of course, it ended up as a tie. And you know what? We had a chance to win it in overtime, and we didn't. So in retrospect, damn it, we gave it our best again. And I hold my head high.
Yeah, in talking with athletes, and tomorrow we're talking with members of the 2008 team, and they were the next ones to win silver, right? 20 years after the effort you guys had in 1988. And it was one of those things where, you know, where that team was not expected to get to the podium, and then they find themselves in the gold medal game, and then it becomes a thing, well, if we're here, we should probably try and win this thing. And then, you know, you throw out the idea that you weren't supposed to be there because you're in it. And then the silver comes, and obviously there's hard feelings. And, you know, I know this is different for everybody. It's obviously been some years removed. Was it hard in the moment to kind of process that result? You're obviously proud of winning a medal again. How do you kind of handle that in the immediate aftermath?
I was disappointed. I mean, of course, you just spent another 4 years of your life. And you did it with some of your best friends, but of course, yeah, we wanted to win a gold medal, and you know, I'm still proudly displaying my 2 silvers, and I show them to anybody that wants to see them. But yeah, I do remember. I didn't even bother to go to the closing ceremonies.
Yeah,
I think I don't remember if our game was the day of the closing ceremonies, but I just decided now that the tournament was over, I spent more time with my wife. And my brother had come to Seoul, my parents. So I think I just let down the guard and relaxed and tried to have a really enjoyable final day or two.
And now we kind of turn the page here and start moving into the 90s. And I know we were talking earlier before we started, but you weren't really intending to get back involved moving towards Barcelona. Just tell us about that journey and how you found yourself at a 3rd Olympic Games.
Well, it was 1 year at a time. I had heard about this Italian professional league. None of us really knew much about it. Sandro Campagna was a player on the national team. He's now the Italian national team coach, but he and I were friends and we'd always chat. So I remember asking him in the cafeteria, I saw him and said, "Hey, Sandro, you know, I'd really like to play in Italy. Do you think you can help me?" And he goes, I'll try, I'll see. But this was in the middle of the tournament, so I think it was really kind of a passing thing. But a week or two after the Olympics, I got a phone call from Sandro, he speaks pretty damn good English. He goes, "Craig, I think my president would like you to play for our team. Can you come out and meet him?" I said, "Yeah." So my one recommendation, Greg, if you haven't done it, don't do it. Don't ever leave California, fly directly to Rome, then to Sicily, sign a contract in the afternoon, get on a flight and come back home the next day.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was a 24-hour turn. But I signed a 1-year contract, and that's really was my objective. I wanted to play 1 year in Italy and try it out, and have a chance to live in a country, learn a language, and enjoyed it so much. And they were gracious enough to ask me to come back another year. So I spent 2 years in Italy, and it was just absolutely wonderful. Came back to California. Tom Milich was coaching Fresno State at the time, and he asked me if I wanted to come and help coach with him. I said, yeah, I'd like to. So I ended up buying a house in Fresno. I was going to enroll in their physical therapy course. Coach gets free education. So I figured, a couple of years doing this, I'm good to go. And about 2-3 months into it, I got a call from a Team Barcelona, and I knew the coach. I believe he was the Olympic team coach in '84, Tony Estayer. But he said, hey, we're putting together this really strong team. We want to win the Spanish championships. We want to see how far we can go in the Europeans. And they basically made an offer I couldn't refuse. So there I am, packing up my bags again, going to Barcelona. Ended up staying for about 12, 13 months. And this, I really kind of scratching my head saying, okay, I must be crazy. But living in Barcelona, watching all of the Olympic preparations, kind of like LA. Remember leading up to LA, you kind of there's a buzz in town. So, I was in the best shape of my life. Those guys train really hard. And again, 5 days a week, a game every weekend. And all of a sudden I find myself 4-5 months out from the Olympics. And I'd always kept in touch with Barnett, and I'd kept in touch with Barbara Caldas. And I said, hey, if you'll have me, I'd like to give it another shot. So it really was just 1 year building on the next year, building on the next year. And all of a sudden, I'm really close. I said, let's do this.
And at that point, I think you were telling me at the Barcelona games, you were 34, 35 years old?
I think I was 35. I was the old man in the pool.
But we've seen goalies before. I want to say in Beijing, there might've been a 41-year-old goalie. It is a position that lends itself to longevity. And of course, there's the mental side of it. At that point now, you've been around for a decade. You've seen all the best shooters that are going to come along. How much now is just the mental knowledge that you have dictating the way you're able to play? Not that you don't have the rest of it, but how much does that part of it really, really help?
It was the easiest Olympics to play. And I say that for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're absolutely right. I knew the shooters. Frank Otto from Germany, played against him for 11 years. Manuel Estearte, wonderful player, but played against him for 10 years, 8 years on the U.S. team, and then all of a sudden going to Italy, I'm playing against him there. And then he moves to Spain the year I go to Barcelona, so I'm playing against him there. So experience is important. As long as you can keep your physical fitness up, experience is a goalie's best friend.
To make that team, you talked about kind of getting back into it. And, I know there were some folks that had played in the 80s with you. Terry Schroeder's on that team as well. How do you describe that makeup? Was that a bridging of kind of a previous generation to a new one that would go on to 96? How do you describe that team's makeup?
Incredibly talented. The 84 team was so disciplined. No mistakes were made. The 88 team was incredibly talented and incredibly brilliant. The 92 team had the ability to be even better, but unfortunately we weren't quite as consistent. A little mistake here and a good team makes you pay for it. But we played some really good games. Losing to Spain in the semifinals, I believe the King of Spain was there, and I'm playing against 4 or 5 of my teammates. I knew them pretty well. They just played a great game. They beat us, flat out beat us. But we could have won a gold medal there too. I don't say this. I went there to win a gold medal. Mm-hmm. And losing to Spain, that was a pretty tough one. And when we went to play the bronze medal game, and I don't think anybody really was out for blood. We kind of got waxed in the bronze medal game. And I think we're just so used to being in the gold medal game that it was a big disappointment and letdown.
Well, and you'll hear that from athletes across a number of sports. Perhaps the toughest game to get up for is the bronze medal game after you lose the semifinal game, because you know how close it was. Again, we come back to that kind of perspective question, right? You retire after those games, and then you're able to see that it's now over a decade before the team can medal again. So it is so challenging for that group to get back to the podium. Does that give you some different perspective on what your era accomplished to get 2 silvers and a 4th place finish? That's quite a dramatic run over, what, 84 to 92.
Yeah, I watched the 2008 Olympics on television. I watched every game. I think I'd be getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning, but I was yelling and screaming. My wife would get out of bed and say, "How they doing? How they doing?" So she's ended up watching. Yeah, I knew that we did have tremendous talent. I mean, it's amazing how many players during that decade came to the camp incredibly talented and didn't make the team. So I know there was quite, I don't know how many of the 92 players went to Atlanta. I know Duplanté did, and I don't remember all of them, but I think there might have been a fair amount of turnover from the quote unquote, I don't want to say veterans, but those that had played in at least 2 Olympic Games.
Talking with Craig Wilson here, 3-time Olympian for Team USA. You held up a book earlier that Terry Schroeder was involved in, and I have heard him tell the story before that when you were playing your best and everything was going great for you in the goal, the ball looked like a beach ball, and it was everything just slowed down, and you could kind of see these shots a mile away. This is hard to do, but how do you describe when you just are like in the zone as a goalie and you feel like you're seeing everything?
You wish it happened every game. There were some games when, yeah, it looked like a beach ball just kind of floating in, and you knock it down the water right in front of you and pass it. And then sometimes it felt like a golf ball. And I think over time, with experience, I had more beach ball days than I had golf ball days. But one of the reporters for USA Today would always ask at the end of a game when we had a press conference, was it a beach ball day or was it a golf ball day? So I think any athlete that's played at the highest levels, they have those. I'm in the zone today. I mean, it really came down to mental preparation and being ready. And I really learned how to prepare myself better every year. Think about the game coming up the next day. Visualize the shooters that you've seen for many years. And then just hope that your team is ready to play some good defense for you. Because I'm not anything without good defense.
It's funny you were mentioning the 2008 games. We were talking about that earlier. And I never had the pleasure of watching you play in person, but I remember the 2008 games and watching some of the games that Merrill Moses put together in goal, where you see things start to happen and it's like there's just a weird momentum building that he's making some saves, but it's almost like the energy he's putting forward is keeping everything out. So even something point blank is going off the bar. It's like it's all working. I could picture you watching that and thinking like, oh, I've had some days like that.
Well, I was living it, man. I mean, Merrill played so well. I was actually texting with him a little bit during those Olympics and just, congratulating him. And if I saw anything, I'd mention it, but I don't want to disrupt his concentration. But it was a pleasure to be able to exchange a few messages with him during the Olympics. And it made me feel a little bit more part of the team. Yeah, they did a good job. Of course, Terry was the coach, which kind of made it special too.
You had talked about the family environment around these teams and, referring to these guys as your brothers. And I've seen it firsthand when you guys get together or talk, and it's like you fall right back into where you were, 25, 30 years ago, whatever it might have been. How do you describe that, that bond and the experience you went through has just cemented a group of guys together no matter what you do now?
Well, quality people, number one, just, that they do everything for you as I would do for them. It's unquestioned. There wasn't even a discussion. And again, traveling around the world, walking on the Great Wall of China, taking pictures with Fidel Castro. You go through experiences that you just aren't going to do or have with anybody else. And of course, walking in the opening ceremonies, playing in the tournament game. I don't know what it would be like to be an Olympian in an individual sport. To me, it doesn't make sense. I need the family around me, and I think that's probably one of the chemistries of water polo players is they're all pretty damn humble. They're fun people to hang out with, have a good time, and they work really hard.
Olympic Games this year postponed. Hopefully, if everything works out, they'll return next year. You've been through the grind of training. Could you imagine what that might be like? How, if you were put in that situation, how would you try and keep your focus, keep your readiness for a thing that you thought was now 3 months away, and now it's 1 year and 3 months away?
Well, you lean on everybody, as just talked about family. So everybody comes together and talks it through, and everybody's going to react a little differently. I think a lot has to do with the coach. How's the coach going to hold the team together emotionally and physically? At least, let's, knock on wood, let's hope they pull this thing off next year. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the bitter disappointment that, we heard from our 1980 team players. It's another year to prepare. I could probably have handled a 1 year delay, but if it goes past that, it starts getting a little dicey. Yeah.
Well, some great stories here, Craig. Always a pleasure to kind of go down memory lane with you. Appreciate you taking us through. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, and just because we were talking so much about that first Olympic Games, I know it's a long way off. It's 8 years now away from the Olympic Games returning to Los Angeles. But do you envision yourself trying to be at a water polo game in LA? And I have to imagine some really serious emotions would coming back to you.
Absolutely. Have they picked a venue yet for the LA Games?
That's been talked about, temporary venues and things like that, but I don't think it's been 100% nailed down on where it's going to be.
No, I will be there, and if I can offer any help in any way, I probably will. And if I'm at the scorer's desk, or if I'm flagging the goals when they go, I don't even know if they have goal flag people anymore, but I'll be there for sure.
That's one of the, for people that don't know, and obviously if you're watching this, you love water polo, but that's one of the fun things about the water polo community is that we're talking with one of our all-time greats who would happily work the clock at an Olympic water polo game. And it's just not a thing you see, Michael Jordan's not coming down to run the scoreboard at the NCAA championship, but it's, as you said, Craig, it's the family, it's the bond, it's the humility. It's all part of the sport. Again, really, really thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Greg. Keep up the good work.